Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on our second webinar of a two-part series brought to you this summer to help you fuel your ambition. I think that all of us as a change community, we got to take care of ourselves too. While we are out there working to help bring change into our organizations and through the people of our organizations, we got to find ways to fuel ourselves as well. Last month, on the first part, we talked about how you fuel yourself to be a leader of change. And it was there, that real compelling individual message. Today, we're going to talk about changing how we do change. What are some of those organizational conditions that are really impacting us at an institutional level? How are we responding and adapting to the new post-pandemic realities and shaping ourselves into the organization we want to become? So that's what we have on the cards today. And it's really that foundational mindset and these actions that you can take to fuel the growing ambition to change how you do change. What we are going to tee up for you today are 5 of those mindsets. We're going to have you think about what you think are the next best actions, steps for each one of them. So this is the agenda we have today. We're going to talk about leading change today and the mindset shift that is required. We're going to talk about turning the corner from a project-based change towards really thinking about enterprise muscle. We will talk about applying structure and intent and the mindset shift that it takes to really be thoughtful and intentional about growing enterprise capability. We will cover how we can build enterprise capability across and throughout the whole organization. What is the mindset required? This is something that goes well beyond just one of us. And then we will conclude with changing how we do change, where I will offer you up some alignment hacks there at the end, some thoughts on ways that you can step into the new changing world, perhaps in a new way. It is worth noting the idea here is fueling the ambition, and fuel is a verb where we use it in the title here. But fuel is also a noun. And what we hope to do in today's session is really load you up with that fuel, that combustible material that you can use as you get ready to help your organization change how you do change. So here is the frame. I encourage you to grab a blank sheet of paper, maybe a PowerPoint slide or a Word document. In each of these mindset shifts, we're going to prompt you and actually ask you to think about your next best action steps for each. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that there is a very valuable free ProClipse resource available for you. It is called Why Building Change Capability is a Smart Investment. It is an excellent page. It's an excellent 20 pages white paper that really explores organizational capability and change, and that goes above and beyond how we apply change management on an initiative to capture the people-dependent ROI of that work. Really fantastic resource. I'm going to chat the link for you in the chat pane. And also, I have it there at the bottom of the slide. Additionally, there are 3 great case studies in there from the US FAA, the University of Virginia, and the DSV. So again, part of the fuel is given to you, that combustible material that you can use to create heat, power, and energy. This is one of the great pieces of combustible material. I'll quickly start by giving you some of the fuel we offered last month. For those of you who couldn't attend, you can re-watch it here. See it in the chat lane again. I will copy that. It is our first part of the webinar, Fueling Your Ambition to be a Leader of Change. During that first part, my colleague Natalia used the story of geese and how they fly and create efficiency by working together. We explored the importance of defining goals and the importance of teamwork. We also explored the importance of sharing the workloads and the importance of empathy and understanding, and mostly the importance of encouragement. It's a fantastic 1-hour webinar. I encourage you really to replay it. And so this is what we are unpacking today, those 5 mindset shifts that are going to help us fuel the ambition to change how we do change. The first is around leading change today. And today, the change conditions, or more precisely, the change landscape today is characterized by this notion of shifting transitions towards the yet to be defined future state. So unpack a little bit about what that means, because this is the way we have always described change at ProClipse. And when people ask for change on a page, this is the one to lean on. Change is about moving from how something is done through some sort of transition or liminal state to a future state where things are done in a new way. Change is always triggered by a reason, maybe an issue or as well an opportunity. It might live in the current state or even might be an aspiration for the future, but there is a trigger or a reason for change. Every change has two sides. The technical side, where we design, develop, and deliver the technical solution. It may or may not be technological, but it is those nuts and bolts to the solution. And in addition to that, we have the people side of change. It is where the solution is engaged, adopted, and used. It is when and only when those two pieces come together that we get successful outcomes. And the change landscape is littered by changes that can do the top arrow, but completely missed on helping our employees engage, adopt, and use the solution. And as we appreciate that over the last 6 or 7 decades, the project management world has been using iterative change. Over the last 2 decades, with the introduction of Agile, we see a big shift. The introduction of not just traditional sequential waterfall change, but also inclusive iterative approaches and change that move us through a series of smaller transitions and futures. But in the end, successful change comes together when we have both the technical and people side. So there we were, moving along, implementing change, and then March 2020, at least here in the GCC, we start to get global pandemic. And I'm going to describe this condition, the condition this creates using a bit of a graph. There we were moving along together, and boom, we almost instantly moved to apart. It happened in 1, 2, 3, 4 days. We called it the involuntary digital transformation. And what happened is we spent time apart. We moved our work from together to apart, and we figured it out. Yes, we did. It wasn't easy, but we figured it out. Why? This human ingenuity and tenacity and resilience stepped in. And now, as the globe continues to respond to this pandemic, we did begin moving back together. And this is the return to the workplace journey that organizations are still considering or have already embarked or starting on, planning, strategizing, or thinking about when it might occur. But what was interesting for us is when we started to ask our clients and our customers what their journey would look like, very few of them brought the line back to where it started. And that is then the reimagining of the workplace, this notion that a chunk of work that used to be together is going to stay apart, and we have a new operating system, effectively to be a new operating system as an organization in this hybrid world. So that is the backdrop of leading change today. And I think one of the biggest impacts that we have had as we step into change today is this shifting horizon. We used to define success on an initiative or for the organizational strategy, that was a 3, 5, 10, maybe sometimes 50 years horizon. Then suddenly we had a global pandemic. And the image on the screen is what the success horizon looked like for a while there. It was the next 3 days or the next 3 weeks. How do we get through the next 3 hours even? Now the change landscape is starting to fall. With change, and at least this is what we have experienced with our clients and customers. With change leaders around the world, we are starting to elevate that horizon a little bit. It's not nearly as far out as it was, but we are starting to look a little further down the road to see what we as an organization can do to continue to respond, but also shape ourselves into the new organization we want to become. So that moving forward, this change landscape is starting to get more and more crowded. We went from an almost near pause to beginning to implement those changes and to incorporate business as unusual into our business as usual approach. Now, we do want to hear from you. We're going to use Poll Everywhere as the interactive software here. You see a URL there at the very top of the screen. I will actually copy it for you at the chat pane for ease of click. It's www.polyev.com/ProClipse Consulting 100. And the first question to you is, what are the biggest challenges or changes facing your organization right now? Because again, our experience is that we are stepping out of just response, just pandemic response into reshaping the organization, reshaping our operations, reshaping our offerings, reshaping our physical workplace even. So engagement with peers is an awesome one, because now engagement is a completely different, has a completely different meaning. Maintaining a personal interaction. So it's www.paulev.com, ProClipse Consulting 100. Your smartphone is probably the easiest way that you can keep your eye on the screen. And by the way, you can leave that browser window open. It will update each time we update the poll. It automatically updates on your screen, on your computer screen. And that is where all the answers are coming in. Rebuilding, connection, it's resurfacing COVID-19, erosion of the culture, I think is an interesting one. Increased change, yes, increased demand for change. There is a pressure being put on the culture as we exist apart, deciding who needs to move back to the office as an example of that pressure. Building trust, of course. What and how will physical space be used in your organization going forward? I see a lot of change around the pandemic here. So new ways of work, we are remote, we have pressure on the culture, work-life obligations, training, and all of that is yielding to financial and productivity challenge that we as organizations are addressing. And that is the change landscape, and this is what it feels like. I mean, this is what it even looked like on the screen just now, that it's a very crowded change portfolio. So part of leading change today is around leading change in a very crowded portfolio. As a change leader, some of our next best action steps could be help create clarity and understanding, show how each change is related to other changes, show how our changes are related to the actual strategy and the directions where we're going as an organization, and show how this change is anchored into who we are as an organization, that anchoring and purpose is critical as we face those chaotic times. And the difference between chaotically flailing and pivoting as an organization is being anchored in who we are. So how do the change in this crowded portfolio connect to who we are and where we're going as an organization? Because we are stepping into this final component about leading change today, or this notion that we have got this protracted transition state. Actually, our colleague from ProClipse Canada, Lisa Kempton, introduced this fascinating concept a while ago, that the transition state creates ambiguity. The only way we can address ambiguity is through agreement. And when we are stepping into this time of shifting transitions, protracted shifting transitions towards futures that we are not quite sure what they are yet, that amplifies the ambiguity and makes it trickier to find opportunity for agreement. And as change practitioners, whether it is those return to the workplace changes, like getting people to work safely, or even having them safe while at work, or those reimagining of the workplace changes, it's how we create the hybrid workplace operating system. There is a tremendous amount of change happening through this protracted transition. Our job as change practitioners is to help our people anchor in the journey and get more comfortable with this notion of, we may not know quite sure where we are going, but we are all going to work together to get there. So there is our first mindset shift. It's around fueling the ambition to change how we do change. This is around leading change today, that backdrop against which change is now happening, the conditions. We talked about the involuntary digital transformation, the return to and our imagining in the workplace, that shifting time horizons of success, actually, how it went to a wall right in front of us and how it is now starting to expand. But that is creating this crowded change portfolio and the potential for protected transitions, where we as change agents can step up and help provide some certainty. Here we go again, our second point. I want to give you about a minute here to think of this one, and it's www.paulev.com, ProClipse Consulting 100 from the chat pane. As mentioned earlier, you can leave the browser window up on your phone or tablet or laptop. It'll update each time I update the poll. Let us have you do a quick little brainstorm here. What is your next best action for leading change today? If this is the condition we are in, how can you most effectively lead change? I will give you about a minute, then we will take a look, but keep an eye because there is an inspiration coming up on the screen right now. Come on, lean into clarity, Bit of communication. Must be a glitch or something. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's a good one. Great insights. See communicate showing up. All right. Maybe there's a glitch. Visualizing change management is change climate. That's it. It's that, you know, it's the techniques and tactics that you incorporate and appreciate as the new reality. Is it a 2 or 3 minute video segment instead of 45 minutes meeting sitting around big tables? We must adapt and adjust how we communicate to make sure it's effective. Clear vision, find a potential solution that works for most and set the example, right? Right. Clear vision, visible leadership. Yep, spot on. Spot on. Okay, and now I hand over to my colleague Natalia, who will take us through the next round, which covers mindsets 2, 3, and 4, before I take you through the 5th mindset and those hacks I promised earlier. Natalia?
Thank you, Talal. And the second mindset, is turning around the corner from project-based change toward really building enterprise change capability. And the innovators and early adopters have been on this journey for a while. And I want to introduce this by clarifying that there will always be project-based change. We will still have and will need projects and initiatives to help us concretely move from a current through a transition through a concrete future state. Now, in addition to that, today's change conditions require that iterative and adaptive change be the norm, because we have to respond to those conditions as they change. And iterative and adaptive changes are achieved through this enterprise change capability, what we sometimes call enterprise change muscle, because this is the world we live in today. And you identified a number of them in our earlier poll, responding to the new ways of working during the and post-pandemic, responding to technology shifts, responding to changes in expectations and new demands from customers. All of these shifts that are happening in and around our organizations have set the stage for iterative and adaptive as the norm. The landscape is shifting in such a way that to really try to lock in on a future state with all of our chips would be silly. Instead, let's acknowledge and appreciate and then step into what it means to lead through iterative and adaptive change. And this is where we need to shift our mindset. You know, we do change management on initiatives. That's where we apply a structured process and a set of tools to capture people-dependent return on investment. And ProClipse has done a lot of research and development about how we do change management on iterative agile changes. But turning the corner is really around shifting the mindset from just doing it on initiatives to really building change capability in a structured and intentional way that ultimately helps us improve agility and portfolio success. So instead of just doing initiatives, like trying to build a house and build another house and build another house, we're taking a step back and designing the infrastructure that would support each and every one of our upcoming initiatives. And we do want to recognize that building a capability on change is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen through decree. It doesn't happen just because we train a handful of people. It takes intent, it takes structure, it takes understanding where we're today and defining where we want to get to. But it is going to be a journey that we can help navigate our organizations through. And it's around what is our anchor point? What is our starting point? How does change get managed today? What is our current level of maturity? And what will it look like when we grow this capability? And what is the intentional way we can help our organizations cross the chasm from where we are today to where we want to get to? So turning the corner is really around shifting that mindset. And remember, acknowledging that we still need project and initiative-based change and change management, and that our conditions require iterative, adaptive change not only to respond to the post-pandemic new norms, but also as a strategic decision by the leaders of organizations who realize that agility and outchanging are going to be the most important sources of competitive advantage they have going forward. So turning the corner from thinking about just project-based toward truly growing enterprise change muscle, we have to do it in response to the post-pandemic era, because iterative adaptive change is what we have in front of us. But we can also do it strategically as a decision to set ourselves apart by how well we change. So what is your next best action step for turning the corner from project by project toward enterprise muscle? We'll give you about a minute and then we can start reading some of the answers. This one again is the poll EV. So you can just go to your browser and start typing. And we'll give you some time for them to start coming in the screen. Training and upskilling, different theories and methodologies. Building a change management office, that is a very interesting one that we have been seeing more and more now in the market. Communication comes back up. And looking at just some of these, it makes me think of Susie Taylor, ProClipse Chief of Staff, who delivered a fantastic webinar and a speech at the ACMP several years ago around how much of what we do to deliver change management on initiatives can be leveraged toward growing change muscle if we are thoughtful and intentional about it. So we see those as communication, as engagement, brainstorming, new approaches, training, engage everyone in why. So we're talking about awareness. So there are lots of, I'll give you another 10 seconds of active sponsorship, definitely one big one. Very good insights here, and around defining what success looks like, really enabling the space to be agile and flexible. And we have sponsorship here, and it tends to show everywhere we ask about this future, we tend to show, it always tends to come up. And ProClipse CIO, Tim Creasy, delivered another one of his great webinars done at the end of 2018 called How to Enlist, Engage, and Empower Your Sponsor. I would highly recommend that you watch it. I think Talal will chat out the link here for you. And it's a 1-hour session that really looks at how do we enlist our sponsors, engage them in a solution, and empower them to really step into being great sponsors to change. So again, this is more fuel, that combustible material that you can use when you get ready to start creating that heat, power, and energy, in particular with those senior leaders. So thank you, everyone. Great insights coming in. And our third mindset shift is around applying structure and intent in an organized process to build enterprise capability. So once we've turned the corner in terms of our mindset and start to think about making great change as part of who we are, not just something we do, the very quick acknowledgement after that is that it takes work. It takes effort and energy and strategy and planning and intent. We don't get good at change just by wanting to. And so structured intent really is the mantra of the one-day ECM bootcamp that we offer as part of the ProClipse Global Affiliate Network. Get in touch with us after the webinar if you want to learn more about the ECM bootcamp for your organization. And it's really the foundation of the last dozen years of research and development ProClipse has done around these leading organizations who are working to build change management as a capability. And we're going to offer you 3 big pieces here. And again, we're loading fuel, that combustible material. So we're going to give you additional resources on each one of them. We'll talk about defining your ambition, gauging your maturity, and mapping out your unique strategy. And ultimately, it's all fun and games until you take action. So again, when we get to the end of this mindset shift, we're going to ask you, what's your next best action step? And defining your ambition is really around that articulation of what we're trying to achieve. When we move past project by project and start to take on growing change capability, enterprise muscle, we acknowledge, and you all identified in that very last poll, that getting our senior leaders on board is a key component of it. And when we're supporting a client down this path, we use the leadership commitment statement as a key element. In our strategic ECM workshops, we actually sit down with leaders and do a whole co-creation activity. What you see here is sort of an example of what one of those would look like. There's a lot of words here, and you don't need to necessarily read it all, but it's the leaders telling the organization why it matters that we take on building change muscle, that change is the norm, that getting good at change is critical for us being successful, and that we're going to seriously take on investing the time and energy to get great at change. That's that ambition. So the leadership commitment statement is something we work with our clients to build. I recommend a very interesting blog on why invest in enterprise change capability. We'll copy the link in the chat again. We also work to define what the future state looks like. So what will I find in your organization in 3 years when you've succeeded at building enterprise capability? Each client, each organization builds their own vision of what that future state looks like. But we often see things like active and visible leadership on each and every initiative, a common language around change, mindset for change, integrated change management and a project management function. We have a community of practice, or maybe a center of excellence, or a change management office. We have activated change enabling roles, so everyone top to bottom throughout the organization understands and defines their role in terms of how they support change. And we have accelerated business outcomes, because in the end, all of this has helped the organization to become who it wants to become. So once we start to apply structure and intent to growing this change muscle, we need to define our ambition, where we're trying to get to. And the second piece is really around gauging our maturity. And again, we got a lot of words in this. It's a bit of an eye chart, but there is an additional full article that Talal is going to place in the chat in just a second, where you can go and access all of this content written up in a really nice article. And the maturity model audit describes the level of institutional organizational maturity in change management. From level 1, where it's absent or ad hoc, we see it maybe on occasion, practiced by a lone practitioner here and there, up through isolated projects into multiple projects where we start to see some momentum, some connection. And we start to see organizational standards at level 4, and at level 5, we see a true organizational competency, where we are differentiated from others by how well we implement and realize the outcomes of change. So those are the 5 levels of maturity. They help us, again, describe how change management shows up in different maturity levels. And gauging your maturity takes it a step farther. That's where we can diagnose where we are today and where we want to go. The change management maturity model audit gives us that diagnostic tool to explore not just the 5 levels of maturity, but really 5 specific capability areas where that competency of change management comes to life in how our leaders lead change, and how we apply change management and the competencies we build throughout, and how we've standardized and how we socialize change as a capability. The maturity model audit lets us gauge that maturity. Once we've embraced this mindset shift and established the baseline where we want to focus on. We will often do this as a co-created activity to not only elevate the conversation, but to create more shared understanding about what it means to change, to grow change capability. So define your ambition, gauge your maturity. And then our third piece around applying structure and intent is around mapping out your unique strategy. So the maturity model describes maturity, The ECM strategy map gives us the tactics we can take to get the organization moving forward. What leadership tactics can be taken to get change management more on the radar? Can we get our leaders to ask for change management reviews? Do we have a committee around becoming great at change? What tactics can we take to get it attached to our projects? How do we build those skills within, across and throughout the organization? What does the organizational footprint look like? Do we have a change management office? Is it centralized? Is it decentralized? Where are we provisioning toolsets and methodology support? And then how do we integrate change management into other existing processes? And when we've embraced this mindset shift of bringing structure and intent to growing the capability, we start to build a plan. We really start to lay out what it will take, the specific actions that can be taken to bring change capability to life more broadly across the organization. So that's the mindset shift around applying structure and intent, realizing that getting good at change takes more than just wishing and hoping. And we can define our ambition, articulate where we're going, get our leaders to contribute to that commitment state, articulate those future state aspects 3 years out. And if we can gauge our maturity and use a diagnostic tool to understand where we are and also where we want to get to, and if we can map out the approach that will help us cross the chasm, then we've really started to bring this to life. So I'll give you about a minute here again. What is your next best action for applying structure and intent to building change muscle, going beyond wishing and hoping and really starting to build true change capability? And the answers are starting to come through. Change management strategy, establishing a CMO. Once again, it comes back. And hopefully you'll be able to synthesize, think a little bit about what it means to adopt this mindset of applying structured intent to the journey. And when we have some fantastic, and here, like we can see some of the fantastic insights, incentivizing those who apply those changes during the transition period, definitely. And that's linked to understanding, assemble change management team, start with one project, definitely start small. In here, it's always interesting how we tend to try and boil the ocean. And in reality, it's always important to be able to go where the energy is and just start where with that one project that could help us build the case for change and for a structured approach. Okay, fantastic insights. Thank you very much. And now we move to the fourth mindset shift here. And this one is around building enterprise capability across and throughout the organization. That organizational capability and change requires and is built upon individual resilience and agility. And so we'll make the case here, right, that there is still going to be a need for more change practitioners. We need more practitioners to build the structured approaches, to build the plans, to have the knowledge to handle it, to have the situational awareness, the experience to coach a sponsor to have a tough conversation, to build a coalition in a place where we're having resistance. And we're seeing a huge growing demand for change practitioners right now. And in addition to that, today's change conditions require building change competencies across and throughout the organization. There is a demand for democratization of change management. Change management really, really needs to go broader across the organization. That change competencies, the ability to excel during change, is something we need with all of our employees, not just those in the discipline. And which got us thinking, because change management is certainly one of those things that we can teach our people, educate our people to help them grow and become more resilient and agile. But I'm wondering, what are some of those other topics that you are educating your employees, your workforce, to help support growth and resilience? Because again, change management kind of gives us the hard of the soft side of change. And if we are to acknowledge the change, some people call it the soft side of change. Of course, that drives me crazy, because getting people to change their behaviors is way harder than maybe a technically complex solution. But change management, the work, the research that ProClipse has done for the last 20 years is really around the structure and intent, building strategies, plans, building rigor to a repeatable process to applying the discipline of change management. And there's a lot of other things, though, that we can help our employees, and a lot of are coming in. I saw empathy, their self-care, shared purpose and values, adaptability. We got a lot of great ones here, and especially post-pandemic, a lot of those are coming up more and more prevalent than probably before: adaptability, agility, and all kinds of additional topics that we need to be able to support our people to help them succeed as we lead change today. Great insights. Thank you. So in addition to all of those additional competencies that can help our people grow, the competency around change management is one that needs to live more broadly than just in the change practitioner community. And we use this analogy that the change practitioners are often like the director of the play. We're not the actors. We're not out on stage. We're not out in the front. In fact, the research is abundantly clear that employees who are being impacted by change don't want us to be the actors. We are not the preferred senders of messages in times of change. The quote actors, the ones we want to see up on stage, are our senior leaders and the people we report to. Those are the quote actors in times of change. And so if we are going to be effective directors, who is the rest of the cast that we need to engage? And ProClipse research has really influenced this and shaped this understanding. It is becoming even more important in today's post-pandemic response world, that it takes a whole cast to effectively deliver change outcomes. And we covered this in part 1 of this webinar series. What you see here is the table that describes each of those primary change roles and how they uniquely contribute to successful change outcomes through adoption and usage. And that's what you have written in there in the middle. And that connection is the powerful piece of these roles, followed by the I by statements. So when we go one by one, sponsors uniquely contribute to successful change outcomes through adoption and usage by actively and visibly participating throughout, building coalitions, and communicating directly. In today's conditions, if our sponsors have internalized and really built that internal competency, they step into being great sponsors each and every change initiative. Our people managers contribute to successful change outcomes through adoption and usage by performing the Clark roles that have come out of the ProClipse research: communicator, liaison, advocate, resistance manager, and coach. And given today's change conditions, if we want to change how we do change, we need to help our people managers internalize and grow that individual skill set so it's something they carry with them each and every day. Our change practitioners prepare, equip, and support people with integrated strategies and plans. Our project managers start to bring people to the table as they're designing solutions. So adoption and usage are there from the very beginning. And our frontline people lean into change. They are the ones that ultimately engage, adopt, and use that change. And so these are the roles in change management that have emerged in the research over the last 2 decades. And if we want to change how we do change, it's around really embedding and building these individual competencies throughout. And what we want to make sure that we acknowledge is that it takes more than just training. Training alone will not help us build these capabilities across and throughout the organization. And you'd be surprised how often ProClipse and us as ProClipse, as organizations who deliver training, often talk our clients out of training, because training is just one piece. It's a piece of the puzzle of growing this competency. This individual skill set also starts to show up on how we hire and how we onboard and how we coach and how we build our competency models, how we write objectives, how we build development plans. It starts to show up even in our performance reviews, where being an adaptable, agile contributor to the organization is part of how you get ahead at this organization. It's what we look for and value in this organization. And this is really where it takes a holistic capability building approach. We give you the resource there at the bottom and in the chat. And this comes out of the building change, why building change capabilities a smart investment, a great white paper. It's definitely not a practitioner only approach. You know, we see it on the left with organizations that are newer to change management or still maybe working to build support for growing the change capability. So we get our practitioners out there. It helps us do better on the initiatives at play, but it's not a long-term solution. Over on the right-hand side, you do see organizations who are not yet pursuing a path towards growing change capability, but they still have changes that need to get managed, a lot of them right now. And so they'll take a consultant-only approach, and that helps us get short-term capability. But it doesn't help us build that internal embedded institutional asset of being great at change. And that's what changing how we do change means in the middle. It's that holistic capability building approach where over time, although it takes us an initial investment, we're investing in the future of the organization. And as we face more major high-risk initiatives, we have that culture of change. We have that muscle of speed and agility we can employ both on purpose for planned change, but also at moment's notice in response to the shifting world around us. So building enterprise capabilities is around across and throughout the organization. That these are skills and competencies above and beyond just change management that will help our people be resilient and grow. But when we get to change management, it's about more than just training. It's really around growing that capability throughout the organization. And before Talal embarks on sharing the fifth mindset, I'll give you about a minute on this one, and then we'll conclude with our final piece of the agenda. So what is your next best action for building enterprise capability across and throughout the organization with those that you work with and through? Embed change management training and performance management process. Clark, you see that for the people managers. Give you about a minute to synthesize your thinking, but also to look for some inspiration here. Adjusting the hiring process, incorporating maturity, definitely into performance reviews, and show value through successful implementation and adoption. That is definitely a big one. Lead by example. That's one of those that one of my favorite phrases is show, don't tell, which is very linked to this one. And we can tell people all we want about the value of change management. But when we start to show the impact, it plants the seed that this is a capability we as an organization need to get serious about growing. And see, network, political dynamics. Very good. Okay, so very good insights. Thank you very much. And for the final piece of the agenda, I will hand it over back to Talal. We'll cover the fifth and final mindset.
Thank you, Natalia. Our final piece of the agenda today is changing how we do change. And here, as promised earlier, we will offer you up some alignment hacks. These are alignment hacks that we have been working on over the last couple of years. They are things that have helped us and our team, plus the folks we work with, just to step into today's change conditions. The first we offer up for you is pivot around purpose. In the face of chaos, we have two options. One was to chaotically flail, and the other one is to pivot. But in order to pivot, we have to anchor to something. We need the fulcrum to pivot around that. That fulcrum is purpose. It's being anchored in who we are as individuals, as a team, and as an organization, and as an initiative. You took a sneak peek to the next one. If we can anchor to purpose, that's when we can pivot, even given today's current constantly shifting conditions. My second alignment hack is to what end, is the phrase to what end. Our team uses this phrase probably more than any other phrase. To what end means, what are we trying to achieve? What is the goal, or what is the objective? What is the outcome? What is the what that we are trying to get out, or the effort that we are trying to put in? And if we are unclear on the to what end, or if I have a little bit different to a what end than you do, then the amount of wasted energy and effort can be significant. So getting aligned on what we are trying to achieve, what is the target, is critically important. That is that alignment around the definition of success. In addition to what end, we also offer the alignment hack, name it to tame it. Yes, if we want to unlock a challenge, if we want to seize an opportunity, if we want to amplify an asset, we must understand what those things are. The level of specificity, that ugly degree of clarity we can bring to the conversation will help us make progress and move around. I will chat this out for you. It's a fantastic tool. It's called the 10 Aspects of Job Impact Model. It's a great article and has a short webinar on the same topic. So you can name the changes people are facing so that you can help people move forward through them. My next alignment hack for you is the matching matters. What do you see on the flip chart? That's a smiley face. What is on the flip chart now? Guess what? It's another smiley face. And what is on the flip chart now? That is a third smiley face. All of those are smiley faces. Now the trick is matching them. How do we match effort to effective? How do we match effort to effect, response to situation, and the solution to opportunity? The problem to the solution, because too often we bring two dots in a line solution to a problem that needed the Mona Lisa, or we bring the Mona Lisa solution to a problem that needed the two dots in a line. So matching is the key here. Right-sizing the effort and then making sure that we are putting the right approach to it. Making sure that we are truly understanding what is sitting in front of us so that we can match. Because right now, nobody has extra time and energy to be running around bringing the wrong solutions to the table. And otherwise we run a real risk of those Ruby Goldberg innovations where we over-engineer a solution and we are not focused on how we can match. The next to last alignment hack is around solution labs. ProSci introduced this right in March 2020 as they were figuring out the pandemic response and how to virtualize their entire training portfolio. ProSci's whole portfolio was in person and they had to move to virtual. And so there were all kinds of ideas about how they could be doing as they move into the virtual space. Very quickly, they identified what was called the Lab 1 solution. Lab 1 solutions help us address what is sitting right in front of us. Lab 2 solutions, they help us improve on what we got in place once it stabilizes. And then Lab 3 solutions help us reinvent ourselves and become who we could become and who we want to become. As an example, the idea put forward was do weekend programs because people were juggling schedules like crazy then. And that was an awesome idea, but they couldn't do it right out of the gate. They just didn't even have a virtual program in place to virtualize and stabilize it. So they took that great idea, put it into Lab 2, packed it into Lab 2. They couldn't have dealt with it at that moment. But because they had the construct of solution labs, they were able to park it in Lab 2 and then bring it to life when they had the capacity to do so. Solution labs are critical right now. Give it a go. In that limited capacity we have, with limited caloric values, we have to invest in the changes going on around us, which leads us to this alignment hack in progress over perfection. And as a perfectionist, this one is really hard for me to swallow. But in today's world, there is a huge opportunity to get stuck. If we let ourselves get obsessed with perfection, if we can embrace that there is an opportunity to get better, then we could have done better than we might have. So if we did not get thoughtful about the people side of change, embrace and grab onto those opportunities for progress, perfection is the enemy right now, given these rapidly changing conditions that we are living in. Which takes us to our very last alignment hack. And then we will move to the Q&A at the end of the session. Here is the final alignment hack. Everything in moderation except grace and gratitude. Those are the two things we need to be overindulging in right now. Grace with those around us, grace with ourselves as well. And gratitude, what are those things that we are grateful for? How can we not only find gratitude, but also express gratitude? Because grace and gratitude are going to be the fuel that we need to get through the changing conditions we have in front of us. Changing how we do things, or how we do change, means stepping into this new world and these new change conditions in a new way to help those around us. So what are the next big actions for changing how we do change? One of the, this is probably the final poll. So what are your next best actions for changing how we do change? Any of those alignment hacks? Pivot around purpose, to what end? What is the definition of success? Matching matters, right energy and effort, the limited caloric value, progress over perfection. I see gratitude. I see setting goals and slowly progressing. Progress is key. Kindness and gratitude post-pandemic. Yes. I'll give you another round, but 15 to 20 seconds to complete your thinking. And then we'll move into closing the webinar. Achievable goals, progress versus perfection. Yes. Progress over perfection. Yeah. Solution labs, gratitude, to what end? And gratitude, don't forget grace, please. That is very insightful. It is great times. As agent and catalyst for change, we are dealing with the most individual and collective change we have ever experienced. Conditions are rapidly changing, and not only because the pandemic conditions are constantly changing, we can change how we do change. If we embrace this mindset around leading change today, we embrace this mindset of turning the quarter from just project-based towards enterprise capability building. We can then embrace this mindset around applying structure and intent. We can embrace this mindset about across and throughout the whole entire organization. We can help our organization change how we do change. So now is our 1-minute brief for you. At ProClipse Consulting, we offer an array of ProSci change management services, ranging from advisory, be it enterprise change management, assessment, change maturity assessment, strategic advice on future state definition, roadmap, design and action plans to close the gap, and even we provide support on the implementation of the mutually defined strategy. We also work with you on designing and setting up your change management office. That came throughout the webinar. Of course, all of that while building the capability at your organization, be it trainings, workshops, support. At the implementation level, we work with you and your team to identify strategic projects and support you or your current change practitioners with the implementation. Alternatively, we can deploy a change management resource from ProClipse Consulting until your team is ready. And certification, as ProSci's global affiliate partners, we are also ProSci's authorized training providers. So meaning we provide a variety of change management trainings and certifications and help embed change management in your organization. To name a few, famous ProSci Change Management Certification Program, a 3-day experiential session gives you the knowledge, skills, and tools you need to drive successful change initiatives. It also includes 1 year access to ProSci's tools and information. up-to-date tools and information. Project sponsor briefing workshop for your leadership team. This came also throughout the presentation. A dedicated program for senior executives charged with strategic initiatives, the sponsor's role in time of change, and leading your team through change, dedicated for frontline managers and supervisors through to senior directors, becoming a change leader who inspires others, as well, of course, as the change management employee orientations dedicated for frontline employees, embracing plans for change and understanding respective pivotal role in the organization. Now we move to the Q&A. The webinar will be up on our website next week in case you want to share it with friends and colleagues and couldn't make it to the next session. Let me check how many questions we have registered on the Q&A pane and how much time we still have to answer. In all cases, if time does not allow, we will share with you the link to all the Q&As. So unfortunately, we're just hitting the mark of an hour. So we will not answer any more questions, and we will get back to you with the link and the whole Q&A. We will capture all your and synthesize your questions and answer them for you. Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great week.
Thank you.